Hi everyone, in this lesson we're solving rational equations and we have some vocabulary here. An extraneous solution can be introduced when you multiply both sides of an equation by the same algebraic expression. An extraneous solution is a solution of the derived equation but not of the original equation. So unfortunately, what this means is even if all of our algebra is perfect, we still have to go back in and check our solutions and make sure they work in the original equation. We're also going to be using a least common denominator. The least common denominator means the smallest common denominator. When an equation has a sum or a difference of two rational expressions, you can use the least common denominator to simplify the equation. And we'll need to do that in this lesson. All right, let's look at example 1, solve and check your solution. All right, so we have a fraction equal to a fraction. The first thing that we're going to do is cross multiply. All right, so the 3 is going to multiply by 5 times x plus 2, and negative 4 will multiply by x plus 2. We'll distribute the negative 4 to both parts of the binomial. 3 times 5 is 15, and then we'll distribute 15 to the x plus 2. Now we're just going to solve for x. When we solve for x, we get a value of negative 2. And even though we're sure we did our algebra correctly, we're going to substitute negative 2 back into the original equation to check it. Now, if you notice, when we do this check, we're going to get negative 4 over 0 equals 3 over 0. Both of them are undefined on both sides. Because we get undefined, when we substitute our value back into the original equation, anytime we get 0 in the denominator, that is no solution. So that won't work at all. So in this case, we have no solution. Okay, let's look at B. Again, we're going to cross multiply. Move everything over to one side so we can solve it. So before I start factoring this, I notice that I can pull a 5 out of every term. That'll make things a little bit easier for me. Make things a lot easier for me. Now I can go ahead and factor that quadratic. So I have two solutions, either x equals 5 or x equals 1. You're going to have to check both of those. So we get 5 over 8 equals 15 over 24. And of course, this reduces to 5 over 8. So we know that 5 is definitely a solution. Okay, now we're going to check the value of 1. And when we check 1, we get 0 in the denominator, and we know that doesn't work. That would be no solution. So the only one that works here is x equals 5. Okay, again, for letter C, we're going to cross multiply to start. Distribute. Set one side equal to 0 and solve. I'm going to take a 2 out before I factor. So x is either equal to negative 3 or x is equal to 2. I have to check both of those. First, I'll check negative 3. Okay, it looks like negative 3 works, so we know that that is a solution. Now let's check 2. We get negative 1 equals negative 1, and we can see that that works. So we know that 2 is also a solution. All right, now, it's not always so easy where you have a fraction equal to a fraction. If you look at example 2, letter A, you'll see that on the left side, we have to combine what's there before we can cross multiply. So we have to find a common denominator. Right, so if we look at this, our common denominator, we know we're going to need a 2, we're going to need a 5, and we're going to need an x. So our common denominator in this case is 2 times 5 times x. And if you remember from our lesson when we are adding and subtracting rational expressions, we're going to compare the old denominator to the new denominator. So we had 2x, now we have 2 times 5 times x. So what's extra in the new denominator? Well, 5 is extra. So 5 is going to go with the 1 that's already there. Now, for the second part, we have a 2 there, and we're going to compare again 5x compared to our new denominator, which is 2 times 5 times x. What's extra? The 2, so that's going to go up top. All right, so we end up with, on the left side now, we have 5 plus 4, which gives us 9 over 10x. 2 times 5, we're just going to write that as 10x. All right, that looks a lot better. So we basically took what we had and we've rewritten it. Now we're going to cross multiply. 9 times 2 is 18. 1 times 10x is 10x. Divide both sides by 10. And we end up with 18 over 10, or I'm just going to write that as 1.8. And we have to check our solution. Do that, we get 1/2 equals 1/2. So we know that 1.8 works, and we have one solution. All right, for letter B and letter C, I would say definitely try them on your own, and then come back to the video when you're ready. All right, so we have to find a common denominator on the left side. So the common denominator is going to be 2 times 3 times x, and this is all going to be equal to 2. Right, so we're going to compare. What we might want to do is maybe we'll put that 3, we'll leave a placeholder, put the 5, we'll leave a placeholder, now we'll do our comparison. So we have 2 and x, and now we have 2 times 3 times x. So what's extra? The 3, that's going to go up there. Now here we have 3x comparing to 2 times 3 times x. What's extra? The 2, that'll go up here. So now in the numerator, we have 9 minus 10. That gives me negative 1. And 2 times 3 times x, that's just 6x. And on the right side, we have 2 over 1. Right, so we'll cross multiply. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. 2 times 6x is 12x. Divide both sides by 12. So this time we get x equals negative 112. Don't forget, we still have to check our solution. We do get 2 equals 2, so we know that x equals negative 112 is a solution. Now for letter C, we've got both sides where we have to find common denominators and combine before we cross multiply. So the common denominator on the left side of the equation is 2 times 3 times x. And so let's write 5 with a placeholder minus 2 times a placeholder. And now we're going to compare 2x to 2 times 3 times x. What's extra? The 3 goes there. Now we're going to compare 3 with 2 times 3 times x. What's extra? 2 and x. All right. Now, on the right side of the equation, the common denominator is 6 and x. We'll write 1 with a placeholder plus 5 with a placeholder. Compare x to 6x. What's extra? 6, it's going to go there. Compare 6 to 6x. What's extra? X, it's going to go there. All right, let's clean this up. So we have 15 minus 4x all over 6x equals 6 plus 5x over 6x. Now we can cross multiply. We're all ready to go. At this point, I'm going to move everything over to the right side of the equation. So I'm going to subtract 90x and I'm going to add 24x squared. All right, so we have a binomial and we want to take out the GCF. So I'm just going to rewrite this up here. I'm running out of room. Looks like 54x is my common denominator. So my two solutions are going to be, we have 54x equals 0, and we have x minus 1 equals 0. So x equals 0 is a possible solution, and x equals 1 is a possible solution. And now we just have to check both of those. Now with the 0 value, you can tell that we have a 0 in the denominator when we do that. So we know that we don't even have to go any further. We know that the value of 0 definitely doesn't work. Now let's check 1. And we get a value of 11.6 equals 11.6, and that does work. So we know that a solution is definitely x equals 1. All right, everybody, that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching.